Behind every uniform, there's a story. Some are heroes, and others, they hide secrets darker than any battlefield. This is the untold truth about the soldiers who turned their loyalty into lethal betrayal. 35-year-old Grady Wayne Wilkes was once seen as a man of discipline and duty. A member of the Alabama Army National Guard, he enlisted in 2010 and worked his way up to the rank of corporal by 2019. As a fire team leader, Wilkes had the training, experience, and respect that comes with wearing the uniform. But on the night of May 19, 2019, everything changed, and not just for him. That night, officers from the Auburn Police Department responded to a 911 call at the Arrowhead Trailer Park in Auburn, Alabama. The call came from Brooklyn Flaherty, Wilkes's live-in girlfriend and the mother of his child. She told dispatchers that Wilkes had assaulted her, grabbing her by the wrist and choking her during a violent argument. Officers William Buechner, Webb Sistrunk, Ron Askelson, and Evan Elliott were dispatched to the scene to investigate. When they approached Wilkes's trailer, they followed standard protocol, knocked on the door, announced themselves, and waited. But what happened next would send shockwaves through the community. Wilkes opened the door wearing a military helmet, body armor, and holding a rifle. There was no warning. He opened fire immediately. Officer William Buechner was shot and fatally wounded. He was rushed to the hospital but later pronounced dead. Officers Sistrunk and Elliott were also hit and sustained serious injuries. Officer Askelson was fired upon but narrowly avoided being shot. Wilkes fled the scene, triggering a massive manhunt that lasted through the night. Just before sunrise, he was captured less than a mile from the trailer park after a local resident tipped off authorities. He was charged with capital murder for killing Officer Buechner, attempted murder for the shootings of Officers Sistrunk and Elliott, and domestic violence for the initial attack on his girlfriend. During the trial, prosecutors argued that Wilkes's actions were calculated. They pointed to his tactical gear and the fact that he opened fire without hesitation. Body cam footage from Officer Buechner was shown in court, his last words haunting the room, "Lord, please help me." Wilkes's defense claimed he was mentally unstable and driven by instinct and muscle memory from his military training. He later told the court he was deeply remorseful and never meant for things to go that far. But the jury wasn't swayed. In August 2023, Grady Wayne Wilkes was found guilty of capital murder and attempted murder. Though the prosecution pushed for the death penalty, the jury handed down a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. As of April 2025, Wilkes has served 1 year and 8 months behind bars. He's housed in a state prison in Alabama, serving a life sentence, not as a soldier, but as an inmate, convicted in a civilian court for crimes that shattered lives and left a city grieving. But Grady Wilkes's dark night was just the beginning. The scars of war and pressure have pushed other soldiers down tragic paths, sometimes with even deadlier consequences. Take Sergeant John M. Russell. He had already been through 2 tours in Iraq. By the time of his 3rd deployment with the 54th Engineer Battalion, something inside him had changed. He was a communications specialist, but behind the uniform he was struggling badly. Those closest to him saw the signs: deep depression, growing paranoia, and a man slowly unraveling under pressure. He believed his own unit was trying to sabotage his career. The stress kept building. He visited military mental health clinics multiple times, but it wasn't enough. Then came the day everything broke. On May 11, 2009, at Camp Liberty near Baghdad, Russell had just finished another tense counseling session at the Combat Stress Center. The session ended in an argument, and he was being escorted back to his unit at Camp Stryker. But somewhere on that short journey, Russell snapped. He overpowered his escort. He found an unsecured M16 rifle, and he turned back toward the clinic. When he got there, he opened fire. 5 U.S. service members were killed. Major Matthew P. Housel, 54 years old, Navy Commander Charles K. Springle, 52, Staff Sergeant Christian E. Bueno Galdos, 25, Specialist Jacob D. Barton, 20, and Private First Class Michael E. Yates Jr., just 19. The scene was devastating. Fellow soldiers couldn't believe it, an American sergeant killing his own. Russell was arrested immediately and faced 7 charges, including 5 counts of premeditated murder. At first, the military pushed for the death penalty, but in May 2013, Russell pleaded guilty to unpremeditated murder in a deal to avoid execution. Despite the plea, Colonel David Kahn, the judge in his court-martial, ruled that the killings were, in fact, premeditated, sentencing Russell to life in prison without parole. His lawyers argued that Russell suffered from severe depression, PTSD, and possibly even a traumatic brain injury from combat. They said he was mentally broken and should not be held fully responsible. As of April 2025, John M. Russell is 60 years old. He's served nearly 12 years of his sentence at the United States Disciplinary Barracks, the military's highest security prison. This tragedy shook the military to its core, and it serves as a haunting reminder of what can happen when a soldier's cries for help are left unanswered. Mental health is not a side issue. It can be the line between life and death. While Russell's tragedy stemmed from a shattered mind, others have committed horrors so incomprehensible that they sent shockwaves across the globe, like Staff Sergeant Robert Bales. On the night of March 11, 2012, something unthinkable happened in Afghanistan. Robert Bales, a former U.S. Army Staff Sergeant, left his post at Camp Belembay, an isolated military base in Kandahar Province. Born in Norwood, Ohio, Bales had joined the Army shortly after the 9/11 attacks. By 2012, he was on his 4th deployment, his first in Afghanistan, after serving 3 tours in Iraq. That night, Bales walked into 2 nearby villages, Al-Qazai and Najiban. What he did next would shock the world. He brutally murdered 16 Afghan civilians, 9 of them children, the rest adults. Some of their bodies were even set on fire. After the first round of killings, Bales returned to the base, only to leave again and commit more murders. When he finally came back to Camp Belembay, his clothes and weapons were blood-stained. He was arrested on the spot. Before joining the military, Bales worked as a stockbroker. No one could have predicted he'd one day be responsible for one of the deadliest war crimes committed by a U.S. soldier in modern history. In June 2013, Bales pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. In court, when asked why he committed the massacre, his answer was chilling. He read from a written statement. He saw a woman named Naik Marga in one of the compounds. After spotting her, he admitted to forming the intent to kill her, then carrying it out with his firearm. When pressed for a reason behind the attack, Bales simply said, "Sir, as far as why, I've asked that question a million times since then. There's not a good reason in this world for why I did the horrible things I did." In August 2013, he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. But for the families of those who were killed, that wasn't enough. Many believed justice had not been served. One grieving Afghan man said, "He martyred 16 of our people, and they won't execute him. Would they forgive us if we killed 16 Americans?" As of April 2025, Robert Bales is 51 years old. He has served 12 years behind bars at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the military's only maximum security prison. He is expected to spend the rest of his life there. Yet not all battles are fought abroad. Sometimes the deadliest conflicts come home, masked by the uniforms and the silence behind closed doors. Consider the chilling case of Isaac Aguigui, who was just 22 years old, a private in the U.S. Army stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia. On the surface, he looked like any young soldier serving his country, but behind closed doors, he was hiding a dark and deadly secret. It all began with the tragic death of his wife, 24-year-old Sergeant Deirdre Aguigui, who was 7 months pregnant. On July 17, 2011, She was found unresponsive in their apartment. At first, no one knew exactly what had happened, but a deeper autopsy revealed the horrifying truth. Her body was covered in bruises and marks, and her wrists showed signs of being restrained with handcuffs. Experts believed she had been suffocated, likely strangled. Deirdre and Isaac met in military prep school in 2009 and married soon after, but by the summer of 2011, their relationship had hit rock bottom. Friends revealed that Isaac was using drugs, cheating, and doubting whether the baby was even his. He wanted out. Hours before Deirdre died, he sent a chilling text to an ex-girlfriend. "We'll have plenty of money. All I need is your body whenever I want it." That money, it came from a $500,000 life insurance payout after Deirdre's death. Isaac used that money to fund something far more disturbing, a violent militia group he called FEAR, short for Forever Enduring, Always Ready. This wasn't just talk. The group, made up of active duty and former soldiers, was heavily armed and deadly serious. Their goal? To stockpile weapons, take over their military base, overthrow the US government, and even assassinate the president. They bought over $87,000 worth of assault rifles, explosives, and other weapons. Members identified themselves with special tattoos and were handpicked by Isaac, usually troubled soldiers who had lost faith in the system. Soon, however, Isaac feared that two people knew too much. One was a former member of the group, 19-year-old Michael Rourke, and the other was his 17-year-old girlfriend, Tiffany York. Isaac believed they could expose FEAR and bring everything crashing down, so he made a deadly decision: to silence them forever. On December 4th, 2011, Isaac and his group lured Michael and Tiffany into the woods, pretending they were going target shooting. But once they were deep in the forest, things turned violent. Tiffany was shot in the head as she tried to get out of the car. Michael was forced to kneel and was then executed with 2 bullets to the head. These brutal murders led to a major investigation and the shocking discovery of the FEAR militia. Isaac and his fellow members were arrested. In July 2013, Isaac pleaded guilty to the murders of Michael and Tiffany. He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole, but that wasn't the end. In 2014, more evidence came to light about the murder of his wife and unborn child. A fellow soldier testified that Isaac had confessed. He said he handcuffed Deirdre during sex, put a plastic bag over her head, and killed her. He tried to pass it off as consensual, but no one believed him. He was court-martialed and found guilty again. Another life sentence was added to his name. As of April 2025, Isaac Aguigui has served nearly 12 years behind bars. But the pain he caused, the lives he destroyed, can never be undone. But Isaac wasn't the only soldier hiding darkness behind his rank. Another uniformed man would turn his home into a battlefield where all was destroyed. Take Sergeant Maliek Kierney. He was a U.S. Army sergeant stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. He was married to Carlin Ramirez, a 24-year-old private first class serving at Fort Meade, Maryland. Together they had a beautiful 4-month-old daughter, a symbol of what should have been a fresh start. But their marriage barely lasted 5 weeks before everything fell apart. The love turned dark. Maliek became violent toward Carlin, forcing her to flee and seek protection through the army. A protective order was put in place, legally blocking him from any contact. Yet Maliek refused to back down. Instead, he plotted a cold and calculated plan to end Carlin's life. He pulled his mistress, Dolores Delgado, into the chilling conspiracy. Together, they mapped out every detail to avoid suspicion. Maliek instructed Dolores to carefully track their gas mileage, every mile from South Carolina to Maryland, so he wouldn't need to stop and risk being caught. Dolores handed him a gun, the weapon of murder. On August 24, 2015, Maliek drove Dolores's car through quiet back roads, arriving in Sever, Maryland. He used a key to enter Carlin's townhouse, a place that should have been safe. A bitter argument broke out, Carlin pleading to end their nightmare. Then, in a final act of cruelty, Maliek shot her 3 times at close range, ending her life. But the horror didn't stop there. Trying to hide the truth, Maliek staged the scene to look like an attack by a stranger. He removed Carlin's pants, pulled down her underwear, and placed their infant daughter in her mother's arms, an innocent life caught in the nightmare. Then he left, leaving the baby with his mother before driving back to South Carolina. Dolores helped cover up the crime, disposing of the murder weapon, acting like nothing had happened, but neighbors heard the baby crying alone. They called the police. When officers entered the townhouse, they found Carlin's lifeless body. The investigation began, a mystery with no suspect. A $20,000 reward was offered for any clue. More than a year later, the truth came crashing down. Maliek was named the prime suspect. His history of violence and the protective order painted a dark picture. Dolores, initially a suspect herself, broke under pressure and confessed everything, exposing their sinister plot. At trial, Carlin's mother broke down, telling the court how Maliek had stared coldly at the coffin during the funeral, whispering, "For all we know, the killer is among us." She begged the judge to deliver justice, warning that Maliek had no respect for life and must be locked away forever. In August 2018, after 11 tense days in court, Maliek was convicted of traveling across state lines to commit domestic violence resulting in death, and of using a firearm during the crime. He was sentenced to life without parole. When the judge handed down the sentence on November 30th, 2018, Maliek showed no remorse. The judge declared he didn't believe Maliek's false claims of missing Carlin and dismissed his lies coldly. Dolores also pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 17 years in prison. As of April 2025, Maliek has spent over 6 years behind bars. Their daughter, once left alone in tragedy, is now being raised by a loving family, safe from the darkness her parents lived in. Just when you think it couldn't get any darker, another soldier took betrayal to a whole new level. Soldier Ryan Anderson was more than just a soldier. He was a man caught between two worlds. Born and raised in Everett, Washington, Ryan served as a tank crewman with the 303 Armor Battalion at Fort Lewis, preparing to protect his country. He had a promising future, a history degree from Washington State University, focusing on Middle Eastern military conflicts, and a deep faith journey that saw him convert to Islam and take the name Amir Abdul Rashid. But beneath the surface, something was unraveling. As his unit readied for deployment to Iraq, Ryan started slipping into dark corners of the internet, extremist chat rooms where hatred and danger thrived. There, he reached out to people claiming to be Al-Qaeda operatives. He didn't just talk. He gave away secrets, detailed sketches of U.S. tanks, classified info about troop movements, and chilling instructions on how to destroy armored vehicles and kill American soldiers. How could a soldier sworn to protect betray his own? For Ryan, it was a desperate search for belonging, a need to be accepted in a world that left him feeling isolated. His actions were noticed by Shannon Ross Miller, a former judge who monitored jihadist sites. Miller raised the alarm, and soon the Army, FBI, and Justice Department launched a secret operation. Ryan didn't know he was talking to undercover agents. He handed over everything from his military ID to maps showing how to hit the enemy hard. But his double life couldn't last. On a cold afternoon in February 2004, Ryan Anderson was arrested at Fort Lewis. His wife and neighbors were stunned. The man they knew had become a traitor. At his trial, his defense claimed mental illness. Bipolar disorder and Asperger's had clouded his judgment. But the military court saw it differently. He was found guilty on all 5 counts of trying to aid the enemy. The sentence was harsh. Life in prison, a demotion to private, and a dishonorable discharge. More than 20 years later, Ryan remains locked away in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, a symbol of a painful truth, that even those closest to us can be lost to darkness. While Ryan betrayed his country in whispers, another soldier chose a far louder, bloodier path. Just in the case of Soldier Dwight Jeffrey. Soldier Dwight Jeffrey Loving was once just another young soldier from Rochester, New York, stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. But on December 11, 1988, everything changed. That day, Loving walked into 2 convenience stores and robbed them, taking less than $100. It wasn't enough. He needed more money, and what he did next would shock everyone. On the cold evening of December 24th, Loving flagged down a taxi driven by 20-year-old Christopher Fay, a fellow soldier working part-time as a cab driver. Instead of a simple ride, Fay was led to a quiet spot inside Fort Hood, where Loving pulled a gun and robbed him. Then, in a chilling moment, Loving shot Fay in the back of the head. But Fay didn't die right away. Seeing him still move, Loving fired a second shot, making sure the young soldier was dead. Fay's body was found shortly after by another soldier, but Loving's deadly spree wasn't over. Just minutes later, Loving called for another cab. This time, it was 44-year-old retired Army Master Sergeant Bobby Charbino who answered. Using the same cruel plan, Loving robbed Charbino, then shot him in the head, killing him instantly. After these 2 brutal murders, Loving went out like nothing happened, hitting local nightclubs with his girlfriend and friends as if his actions didn't weigh on his conscience. But that night, things began to unravel. Loving tried to rob a third cab driver, Howard Harrison. This time, Harrison fought back, struggling hard enough to disarm Loving and escape, even though he was hurt. Harrison's brave fight gave the authorities the break they needed. The very next day, a joint team of FBI agents, Texas Rangers, and Army investigators arrested Dwight Loving. During a recorded confession, Loving shocked everyone by admitting he killed his first victim just to see if he could get away with it, and that he murdered the second for fun. In March 1989, at only 21 years old, Loving was tried in a military court at Fort Hood. He was found guilty of 2 counts of murder, attempted murder, and several robberies. The court sentenced him to death. His conviction went through years of appeals, but in 1996, the Supreme Court upheld the death sentence. Then, on January 17, 2017, just days before leaving office, President Barack Obama commuted Loving's death sentence to life in prison with no chance of parole. Since then, Loving has been locked away at the U.S. Disciplinary Barracks, the military's highest security prison in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. As of 2025, Dwight Loving is 57 years old and has spent over 36 years behind bars. Given his sentence, he will never leave prison alive. Sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones standing right beside us, hidden in plain sight. These stories peel back the uniform to reveal a darkness most of us never want to believe exists. When the people sworn to protect us become the most significant threats, it shakes the very foundation of trust and safety. It makes you wonder, what twists a person's mind so far that they turn against everything they once stood for? Is it anger, fear, betrayal, or something even darker? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a real conversation about what drives someone down such a deadly path. If you're ready for more raw, hard-hitting stories that expose the shadows behind the headlines, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more truth coming your way, and you won't want to miss it.